Hi. So, it's November 1st, and yesterday I just finished Inktober for, I think this is my third year going through Inktober. So, I'll talk about my experience with that and what I think, and we'll look through some of the things I did, my thoughts on the works, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons of doing something like that. This is where I set up on my desk. This was from a piece of old newsprint pad, but here's the sketchbook I used. This sketchbook I found at the art store is mixed media, or rated for mixed media. It did pucker a bit, like if you're trying to use really wet mediums in it, it does do that, fair warning, but overall I liked it. Here's the Sumi ink I used. I had a smaller one I was trying to use up and I spilled that everywhere. I'm surprised it's not as much of a mess everywhere from that. I would dilute it between 2 pools of water. I had a thing of water for cleansing, and I would use these little bowls and different dilutions of water. I also had this jelly pen that I would use sometimes. I had some from last year when I used jelly pens for a project, and I used varying Sakura brush pens, so all kind of the same brand. These are really cool. This one's the thickest one, but I had at least 3 different sizes of these. Okay, so to start, I always like to give kind of the date, year, and signature and whatnot. First was Gargoyle. I actually sketched out for this one quite a bit, trying to find references, some anatomy, or kind of how I wanted to do the face. It's kind of a hybrid of several things. I always have trouble doing tails. I end up making some part like too thick or shaking the brush a little too much. But this was my first time really experimenting with the Sumi ink again. I use it on and off here and there, but I haven't played with it in a while. Scurry. Pretty basic. Little mice. Bat. That one was fun. I liked the original sketch I did for him before. I used some for the light parts. I did use a white jelly pen. I forgot about that. But yeah, that's one where I think the original sketch looked much better. Sometimes I accidentally skip through, or I skip purposely because there is bleed through in some of this paper, even though it feels kind of thick. Scallop. I wanted to have fun with the textures through it. I did varying washes and Sumi ink to get the gradients. Flame. This is one that also, this initial sketch looked a lot better and flowier. The people in it looked a lot more gestural. Okay, wanted to do something simple after all those larger works, and this one felt really satisfying. I like the simplicity of it. Trip, thinking of all the things that I would want on a trip, or what you take with you for an adventure. Match. This one was fun because I started to pull the other pens out and kind of did some of the more simplistic animals, kind of illustrative kind of things. Nest. I like the thought of, I used the jelly pens again, and I think they're like the Moon series one. I don't have one near me. but those are a little more opaque. So they're two kinds: the original like jelly pens that are just like gel inks, but then they have the ones that are like the Moon series that are opaque, kind of like chalk paint kind of pens. Krabby. Had fun doing different shapes. Kind of silly. Eagle. One was fun. Love anything birds. Here's one of the ones that I started to draw out, and then I lost focus, which is why it just looks like your classic juvenile starter painting. Is I spaced out and started playing around with stuff instead of thinking of the whole image, and it kind of fell apart, but it's whatever. It also bled through, so. Kind. What's more kind than sharing your cookie? Empty. A little on the nose, but fun nonetheless. Armadillo. Pretty straightforward. I don't know why I lost focus somewhere and the proportions of his head are off. I guess I thought he would fill up the paper more, but for some reason, even though erasing it several times, I still managed not to fill the paper up. That's a newbie's mistake for sure. Fowl, the guinea fowl. He was a lot of fun to draw. I actually did this in one of the brush pens. I think it was one of the first ones that like I tried doing some shapes along with the feathers and everything. Salty. Scrape. He was actually a lot cuter also in the initial drawing. I don't know what happens when I ink things. I like lose the lines too much, which you're supposed to lightly erase them out, but I have trouble with like glare. So sometimes even if I've kept the lines thick, having the light shine down on it, trying to follow the graphite line can be hard, but it was fun. The original was cuter. That was accidental. Ponytail. Kind of an homage to my dude. It's got beautiful hair. I don't know how I skipped another one. Bluff. You kind of lose the lines where the water comes in. I think this was kind of the Wikipedia page for Bluff. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, but definitely once it dried, I lost some of the spots through here. Bad Dog. If anyone recognizes this character, that was my mother's favorite show, and we watched it with her as kids a lot. Heist. What better than to steal a french fry as a little bird? Booger. It's one of those that I rolled my eyes at and really rushed to do, but it made me laugh nonetheless, so it's a lot of fun. Here's yet another one I spaced out with. Was cool to start out with, and then I just tried going abstract and everything and just lost a lot of lines and everything. So it was fun, but definitely didn't translate over. Tempting, for sure. This one, I have no idea, like I had trouble, I messed up the date and I kept writing it backwards, or I was writing it down looking at something else, and I started writing that down, but whatever. Ego. It just, if you're into lifting, find that funny. Snack. One of our favorite snacks in this household. Camping. That one was fun. I hate filling up spaces like that too much, though. I should have just used my ink because I'm afraid of like draining the pens, but it was fun to do. Uh-oh. Pretty straightforward. I had trouble putting that one together. Gear. That one was done in mostly Sumi ink other than some of the outlines. And the final, farm. Yeah. So you saw I worked with Sumi ink. I chose that because I am predominantly a painter. It's just what I love leaning into. Although I definitely chose just a pen when it felt reasonable or functional for the work I was doing. But I do suggest, like, if you love watercolor or gouache or anything like that, experimenting with an ink you can paint with definitely helped with consistency, because it felt more like what I'm used to working with and kind of my style. I'm not opposed to learning how to do the style of the very intricate line work. I just haven't worked in it. So that was enjoyable. Definitely choosing ink helped a lot. So the pros, I would say being able to catalog something like that, showing up consistently, proving to yourself you can do something consistently like that is definitely a pro, even on days that I was rushed, or even like when I was out of town and I came back and was able to get something in, even though it was small. It felt kind of ceremonial, like, in a way. I think another pro is pushing yourself a little bit in a medium. Like I said, I'm used to painting, but I think it's fun to experiment, and you kind of force yourself through some of that uncomfortable feeling when you do pick up a new medium or trying anything new. There's always a moment where it's very hard, and being able to push that and see what you can achieve is really cool through the month. I guess a pro / a con that a lot of people feel is the prompts. You really have to be creative with some of them. Like, just one word is really hard to stretch your mind in some senses. Like, some things people would just be like, oh, I didn't want to paint this, so I did something else today for it, which is fine. But for me personally, I prefer to try to really push myself to actually take those prompts and use them seriously. I guess the cons, one, having to show up every day. Like I think I mentioned, not everyone can do that. Some people have more chaos in their life, and doing something like that absolutely every day, just not feasible for them. And I think that's okay with a lot of these things, you know. Over the years, I've just become more chill, and it's kind of more like doing a day here and there because you get to participate. You don't have to be so strict. Yes, another con that people have also gotten around, because people use different mediums now. If you're not used to using ink, like, would say when I do Inktober, looking at my work, and it's probably because I just don't think it out well. I need to do more thumbnails. Like, I could take a lot longer to make them look nicer, and it takes up a lot of time. And it can, I don't know about a con, but it is hard in the internet era when you're learning something, especially with art. Like, people can be cruel, I would say. I haven't experienced that yet, but I'm also not popular. No one knows me, so the more people that know you, the more people that are going to criticize you. And I think when you're switching mediums that you aren't good with, it's hard to expose that kind of childlike drawing. I know for me, with some of those that I just didn't think out, and I will fully admit I just spaced out. Yeah, it can be hard to put up that's your piece, and especially if you keep it in a book like this. Like, they're kind of in there, and if you're showing it off like I have, you have to flip past ones that you mess up if you keep it in a book, which is fine. But I know people prize the super aesthetic sketchbook with like finished pieces in it and no mess ups. They've learned continuing to do this is don't take it too seriously. Have fun, enjoy the process of working your brain a little differently. It's just cool to see, like, every year how different it is. Anyway, that's my experience doing Inktober this year. I had fun. I always end up hating it near the end, but I will keep doing it. Like, it feels overwhelming when you're in it, but it's just a month. And that's not super long in the grand scheme of things. That was my experience. I'd love to hear about yours if you also worked in it this year, and what were your thoughts and what were your struggles? What are your pros and cons? Tell me about it. And that's all, and I'll see you in the next video.